Ever wondered how to build a form in a website code? Forms are the unsung heroes of the web, the gateways that connect users to data. They're the virtual bridges that facilitate communication, transactions, and so much more. Whether it's signing up for a newsletter, making an online purchase, or submitting a query, forms are the heart of interactive web experiences. We're about to embark on a journey of understanding the magic behind these essential elements. Stay tuned as we dive into the process of building a form in a website code. Before starting with the coding, understanding the basics is crucial. Let's start by breaking down the purpose of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in building a form on a website. HTML, or hypertext markup language, is the skeleton of your form. It's where you define the fields that users will interact with, like text boxes, checkboxes, and buttons. It's what gives your form structure. Next up, we have CSS, or cascading style sheets. If HTML is the skeleton, then CSS is the skin and clothes. CSS allows us to style our HTML form, giving it colors, fonts, and layouts. It's what makes your form visually appealing and user-friendly. Finally, we have JavaScript, the brains of the operation. JavaScript gives your form functionality. It's what enables the form to do something when a user fills it out and hits submit. Without JavaScript, your form is just a pretty but lifeless mannequin. Now, it's important to understand the different types of forms you might be tasked with creating. Contact forms are used for visitors to get in touch with the website owners. Registration forms, on the other hand, are used to sign up for an account or a service. Login forms are used to verify a user's identity and grant them access to their account. With these basics clear, the actual coding part will be a breeze. Starting off with the foundation, the HTML structure. Firstly, let's focus on the building block of any form, the form tag. To create a form, we encapsulate it within the form tag. It's like drawing a box around your form elements so that your web browser knows what to do with the information within. Now, within this form tag, we have a bunch of input tags. These input tags are the fields where users can enter their data. You can think of them as the doors and windows of your form, where information comes in and out. Each input tag has a type attribute that specifies the kind of data it can accept. For instance, let's talk about the text type. This is your standard input field where users can type in pretty much anything. It's like the front door of your form, welcoming all kinds of data. Next up, we have the email type. This one is a little more specific. It only accepts data in the format of an email address. It's like a mail slot on your door, designed to accept only letters. And then we have the password input type. This is a secure field where the data entered is obscured or hidden. It's like a secret door where only those with the right key can see what's behind. Finally, we have the submit type. This is the button that sends the data from your form to wherever it needs to go. It's like the doorbell that signals the arrival of your data. Remember, each input field should have a name attribute. This name is used to identify the data collected from that field. It's like labeling your doors and windows so you know where everything is coming from. And there you have it, a basic structure of an HTML form. It's made up of a form tag that houses various input tags, each with their own type and name. See, the HTML part wasn't so hard, was it? Now, moving on to the next step. Now that we've got our structure, let's make it look good with some CSS. Jumping right in, CSS, or cascading style sheets, is the design language of the web. It's what gives our HTML form its visual appeal, allowing us to control colors, fonts, layout, and so much more. Let's start with color. CSS lets us change the color of our text, background, and even our borders. To change the text color, we use the color property. For instance, color blue will turn your text blue. Backgrounds get a little more exciting with the background color property. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can explore gradients for a more dynamic look. Next, we have font size. This property controls the size of our text. Whether you want your text to scream with a size of 36px or whisper at 12px, CSS has got you covered. Then there are margins and padding. Think of margins as the space around the outside of an element, while padding is the space between an element's content and its border. Both are crucial for creating clean, organized designs. Speaking of borders, the border property is a triple threat. It lets you control the border width, style, and color all in one go. You can have a thin, dotted red border or a thick, solid black one. Your imagination is the limit. And let's not forget about width and height. These properties control the size of an element. You can specify exact dimensions or use percentages for a more responsive design. Lastly, remember that CSS is read top to bottom. If there are conflicting styles, the one that's lower on the style sheet will take precedence. This is the cascade in cascading style sheets. As we wrap up, let's take a step back and admire our work. Our form is no longer just a structural skeleton. It's a fully fleshed out, aesthetically pleasing entity. It just goes to show a little styling can go a long way. With those tweaks, our form is starting to look pretty good. Now comes the fun part, adding functionality with JavaScript. You've heard it said, and it's absolutely true. JavaScript, the language of the web, is what breathes life into our static HTML and CSS. It's the magic that makes the user's interaction with the web page dynamic and engaging. Let's start with form validation. Without validation, users can submit incomplete or incorrect data. That's not what we want, right? So, JavaScript comes to the rescue. We can use JavaScript to check if the user has filled out all the necessary fields and if the data entered is in the correct format. For instance, an email field should contain an @ symbol and a period. If the user tries to submit the form without filling it out correctly, we can use JavaScript to display an error message. Now let's talk about sending the form data to a server. Once the user has filled out the form and hit the submit button, we need to do something with that data. This is where JavaScript's Fetch API comes in handy. We can use it to send a request to the server with the user's data. The server will then process this data and send back a response, which we can use to update the user on the status of their submission. Remember, JavaScript is an event-driven language. That means it's waiting for something to happen, like a button click or a form submission. Once that event happens, JavaScript springs into action, running the code we've written in response to that event. So let's put it all together. With HTML, we structured our form. CSS helped us make it visually appealing. And now JavaScript is adding the functionality, making sure the data is valid and sending it off to the server. And with that, our form is not only looking good, but it's also functional. Great job making it this far. Let's quickly recap what we've learned. We started our journey by getting a solid understanding of the basics, where we discussed the importance of forms in a website and how they serve as a bridge between the user and the web server. Then we dove into the HTML form structure, the backbone of any form. We learned how to construct an HTML form using different elements like input fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, and drop-down menus. We also discussed the importance of the name attribute for data transmission and the action attribute to specify where the data should be sent. After that, we moved on to styling our form with CSS. We learned how to make our form visually appealing and user-friendly. We discussed various CSS properties and how they can be used to style different form elements. We also touched on the concept of responsiveness, ensuring that our form looks good on devices of all sizes. Next, we added functionality to our form using JavaScript. We learned how to validate form data, ensuring that the user has filled out the form correctly before submission. We also explored how JavaScript can be used to enhance the user experience by providing real-time feedback, and that's how you build a form in a website code. It's a process that requires a good grasp of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But don't worry if it seems daunting at first. Like anything else, it gets easier with practice, so don't be afraid to experiment and play around with different form elements and styles. Remember, the more you practice, the better you'll get. And if you ever get stuck, don't hesitate to revisit this video or look up online resources. There's a whole community of web developers out there who are more than willing to help. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to practice what you've learned today. Until next time, happy coding!